hit the wrong button. Oh, it's that time again of the week. It's time to be awesome together. I am Truckfall, and I am Tyra-less tonight. Tyra is at a professional conference doing some professional awesome things tonight and the rest of this weekend, and hopefully staying away from the hurricane. But in her stead, we've got the man, the myth, and the number one supporter of Brian Ibbett, Hammond Chamberlain.
Hey, I gotta support him. I work with him on a super regular basis for a number of shows.
Yeah, I know, right? I love this but that's the thing. The more I was digging into, putting together a little quick bio to post out for the show and whatnot, I was like, well, of course we know about the upfront stuff, the beyond the playlist, soundography, and then it's like, well, but that's not how I met you. I met you behind the scenes of the show with Tom Merritt and Scott Johnson.
Current Geek Chronicles.
Current Geek. Yeah.
Yep. And then I did Current Geek Chronicles during the pandemic with them. I was booking guests for Current Geek, and then they changed the format. And then during the pandemic, they did Current Geek Chronicles, and I produced all 10 of those episodes.
And so you do booking, you've done production, you're a producer. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a producer on America's Next Top Podcaster.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Also on a bunch of other shows that people probably don't know, but like 6 or 7 other shows.
So I like to say I'm the biggest secret that podcast has ever kept. That is still true, but he's the second biggest secret that podcast.
I'm shorter than you are.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Bigger personality, more fun, but definitely shorter. But Hammond, I actually had your tag for you at jhammondc. It's jhammondc.com, where you can find all the amazing things. You've done so much work in and out of all the scenes. And Kaz here. Hello, Kaz. Yeah, Kaz says, for me, everybody is shorter. Pretty much. I will tell you a quick story about that. I imagine short people, when they find somebody shorter than them, it has the same effect. But I am 6'7". I'm a very big guy. I was at the EMS World Expo. EMS World Expo a week or two ago. And I'm going through, and I go up to one of the tables, and there's this guy who's good 2 inches taller than me. It was very disconcerting. It was very like, I looked at him, he's looking at me, and of course we're talking, I was like, I just kept looking at him. He's like, what? I was like, I can still take you. I was like, yeah.
My thing is I don't realize just how short I am until I'm around other tall people. So like at Dragon Con, I'm armpit level with about 80% of the people there. And it's uncomfortable. And then at FanX here on Salt Lake, I'm at, shoulder armpit level with about 60 to 70% of people there. Mm-hmm. And I really don't like crowds when I can't see around them. And so, being 5'5" on a good day, 5'6" depending on my shoes.
I don't remember you being that short.
Yeah, I'm 5'5" on a good day, 5'6" depending on the shoes. If I think tall thoughts.
You're a 90s kid. You got those moonwalking shoes that you wear.
So, I mean, I'm okay with it, but there are times where I get really kind of anxious and uncomfortable, and crowds, especially giant con crowds, really do get me.
So for those of you who have listened before, you may have heard a story where I've talked about different past volunteers that I really enjoy. And I talk about, so every year when we get ready for the con, we talk about things to get ready. We have a show where we have different people come on or call in here on Be Awesome Together, and they give their tips for preparing. And I tell your story. So as the first year I volunteered was the first year and only year you volunteered. And it was a Saturday. Now I'd already been to Dragon Con twice before that. So I was somewhat familiar. Saturday. Now this is in the before times, kiddos, where the crowds just kept growing and growing and growing. And that was a year that we hit, probably, we're back at it now, but that's the year we first hit like 70,000 something people.
From what I heard, it was 80 because you guys moved. All the vendors had moved into the other building. They'd moved across the street.
I could have been 80.
Yeah.
I know the final year before Dragon Con, which was 2019, before Dragon Con, the final year before COVID was 2019, and it was 89,000 that year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could have been 80 that year. So yeah, I mean, it was growing. And I walk into the mid morning on a Saturday. Now, keep in mind, when we kick off Fridays, it was like before the first panel. Dunaway sitting there going, all right, what do you want to do? And I took that method more or less, not the last minute stuff, but hey, what panels do you want to do? What times do you want to block out? Those kind of things. And he was doing that. And so you had done all your stuff. And Saturday morning, I come in we always had this little pre-show kind of hangout, coffee talk, whatever. And I went, where's Hammond? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? You sent the newbie into the wild on a Saturday? What is going? And by the time we found Hammond, he's sitting in the corner rocking. I need to go home. No place like home. No place like home. It's like, oh, buddy. And then he never came back to this day. So this is the Hammond that I tell that story about. And it's really about preparing buddy system. I would never have thought about the shortness aspect. And yeah, armpit level is not a great level to be mid-con. A friend of mine, Emily Swan, she is also short. Now, I met her the first time I met her. She had a big personality like you. And so later on other shows when I was talking about her, I was like, yeah, she's like 6 foot tall. And they're like, no, I'm like 5'4". I'm like, no, you're like 6 foot. No, she's really 5'4". And this year, her TikTok video of her experience at the con was backpack, walking through the lines. Then she showed some other stuff. I was like, oh, that's funny. Good 30 seconds of my view of backpacks as I walk through lines.
Yeah, it was an eye-opening experience. I have to say though, the vendors area was super cool. It was incredibly crowded. It was like walking It was like walking through the candy store at the Hogwarts display at Universal, where it's just one line all the way through, and it zigzags through all the things. And if you break the line, you're not getting out. And if you try to cut the line, you're going to get yelled at. So you're just in this line going through the entire gallery until you reach the exit door. And if you step out to buy something, then you have to kind of put your blinker on to kind of merge back into traffic.
Dude, so the first year I went to Dragon Con, I always carried my backpack. And at that time, I shouldn't have downsized, but I did. But it's the largest backpack I could find. I don't have a sponsorship, but I'll take one from Everkey. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. So that's probably why they don't sponsor me. But I had the Everkey Titan, and it was big, and I'm big. And every time I tried to walk, it's the only time I ever went. I went twice. The first year I went, hated it. Second year I went and waited till like late Sunday to take my daughter through because she wanted to see it. That's it. Because with my backpack, it's like slam people, slam shells, slam wall. And I'm already self-conscious as a big guy, knowing that I take up more space than most people. I bump people because I can't see them or whatever.
Those short guys in front of you, you don't look down, so you miss us.
I don't miss you. Nah, I do miss you. I wish you would come back. That was a dumb joke, and I almost apologize. It's funny. But yeah, no, you're not wrong. If I'm looking at something playing, oh, I'm so sorry. But then you add, I think that backpack has like 2 feet off of my back. I don't know. I'm bad with measurements. This is 6 inches, right? I don't know. For the podcast, we got to cut that out because nobody can see my hands. But it is a lot of space, is my point. And it's not just straight back, right? Because I turn. So now you get this radius. And I just like never again. Plus, that particular year, not only was it super crowded, every other booth was Funko. I'm like, holy crap. One, I'm overwhelmed. 2, I just want the plain Deadpool Funko. That's all I want. And everything was con exclusive this and that and this model and that model. I was like, yeah, not for me. But you liked it. So what did you like about the vendor hall?
So I came in with a very specific goal. I wanted to buy a resin replica of a Battlestar Galactica blaster. That's all I really wanted. Right. That I had money set aside for it. I knew it was a place I could go. I walked in and I found a vendor that did it, and they gave me a smoking deal, and I got my blaster, and I came home and I cleaned it up and painted it. And it was the first time I've ever done anything like that. So I had the Dremel tool cleaning it up and sanding and all the things, and then, based it out and did all the painting. And I still have it hanging right there on the wall. And it's my Dragon Con Memorial Blaster. But the other thing about it though was that at FanX, you have about you have hundreds of vendors. But over the course of all the vendors, not counting the artists, you start seeing the same things, the same kind of plastic weaponry, the same kind of masks, the same kind of
Yeah.
costumes. The
Right.
one thing I can say about Dragon Con is you did not have that kind of repetition. It's like they almost fight against that kind of repetition. So if you saw
They
something
might.
unique at
Yeah.
you saw something unique at one table, you were kind of guaranteed that was the only time you're going to see it. So you might want to jump out and grab it. That way you're not going to miss it because you're not going to see 9 other tables that have the exact same stuff.
Yeah. I mean, a friend of mine at the first year I went, and I did catch her on Monday morning because I was like, yeah, I'm not fighting the crowds to come, because I was going to see her that I think I went on Saturday, right? It's the worst time to go. I think I went on Saturday afternoon. I was like, no, I got to the end of the aisle, instead of turning to go down the other 50 aisles, I was like bolting for the door. But I went and saw her on that Monday, and she made all kind of Doctor Who memorabilia, and I actually have now. I bought my daughter something from her there. But for one of my birthdays, my show partner at the time, who we mutual friends, he commissioned an actual TARDIS jewelry box that is bigger on the inside. So when you open up, it all expands out. And I really don't have jewelry to put in it, but I love it. And in the lid, it has like my name and birthday and Gallifreyan or whatever. Like you said, unique, very hand painted, very, very cool, one off. And I think that is that's what I look for everywhere. And I go to different cons. So I think I'm pretty sure FanX owns Atlanta Comic Convention now. It was Imaginarium before, and they sold out. And I really want to come and play the FanX Salt Lake show. It's tough because in the con world, well, like Dragon Con is definitely a different beast, period. And they actually give different levels of professional. And I think I would be if I weren't a director there and I weren't local, I think I'd be at a level that I could get some help. Like maybe I could get a flight to Dragon Con and do the shows, but I have to take care of everything else myself. But they have levels. Most cons don't. Either you're a celebrity doing the celebrity stuff, or you're basically a volunteer. And I get that world. It's a tight margin. But I've been working with them in Atlanta for 4 or 5 years now. And they give me almost carte blanche to say, hey, what celebrities you want to moderate? What do you want to do? What panels you want to do? Because I got in day one as they came into Atlanta. And now I was like, but please, I can't afford. I don't want to. Actually, I don't want to. If I'm going to work for you, I don't want to afford flying to Utah and paying for everything to come do a couple shows and host your stuff. But God, I would love to come out there and hang out with you and Scott and everybody and do that.
Well, the one in Salt Lake is actually getting fairly recognized because it sometimes is easier to take an hour and a half flight from LA to Salt Lake than it is to drive the 2.5 hours to San Diego.
I get that. I totally get that.
They're pulling people that San Diego usually gets on a regular basis. So we're getting Mark Hamill. We're getting Stan Lee before he passed away. Not after he passed away, of course, because that'd be weird. But we're getting these people.
I mean, you could easily get him now, is all I'm saying. Just skill to earn, you'll be all right.
But I mean, it's one of those things where it's sometimes the cost to benefit of the hour flight minus the 2 hour versus the 2 hour drive and the crowds. And the fact that it's all kind of centralized. There's the convention hall, the hotel, there's, all kinds of stuff right around. It's big. It's a much bigger venue than in San Diego. So, I mean, there's some benefits to the Salt Lake show that are starting to kind of show up.
That's cool.
Especially with the Sundance credibility. The Sundance credibility also plays part of it too.
So Sundance is that place that gives out awards for movies you've never heard of. So
that's why. Well, not everyone, because I mean, Blair Witch was screened there and sold and became one of the biggest.
I'm just kidding. A lot of good movies are screened there and win awards, and then you definitely. Yeah, I mean, typically it's not gonna be the blockbuster like Marvel films, but it's still a lot of good stuff. Yeah. But at first, it was movies you've never heard of.
When I was in college, I used to say, "Hey, let's go up to Sundance," and I would drive up, find a movie that never heard of, buy a couple tickets, walk in and see it. You can't even get to Park City now because it's so popular.
No, I mean, that's kind of the goal and the detriment of every con. Cause asks, is the FanX a 24-hour con?
No, it starts Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon and goes until Saturday night.
Well, but do they shut off like in Atlanta?
Oh
They
no,
close it.
that has it has a timeout because Salt Lake City is
Yeah.
still Salt Lake City. So
And even though Atlanta does, so it also depends on where they're hosting it. Like in Atlanta, the reason that DragonCon does not do the convention center, among I'm sure other reasons, we have great partnerships with 5-star hotels, all this jazz, but the convention center shuts down at midnight.
Yeah,
and you can't do late panels. They literally, the Georgia State Patrol comes in, because I was there. It happened to me. Georgia State Patrol comes in and smiles, and Georgia shows like, yeah, you guys got to go. I was like, oh, we didn't realize, because the con people booked it for 11:30 start time, and 30 minutes into the panel show with an okay crowd at midnight in the middle of nowhere. I mean, Atlanta's not middle of nowhere, but this was a new con. 10 people in the crowd. Yeah, we're like, I'm EMT, right? I instantly connect with law enforcement. Like, hey, Mountie's what I call. They hate me called Mountie. It's like, hey, Mountie, you like the show? What you doing? He's like, oh no, you're making me laugh, but we close in 5 minutes. You guys got to go. Like, I'm sorry, what? Oh, is that because I called you a Mountie, sir? I apologize. Like, no.
So speaking of relating to law enforcement, 2 years ago, I was in Las Vegas with our mutual friend Brian Ibbett doing the live TMS Vegas show, and we were doing his version of Taskmaster, and we were filming there on Fremont Street when all of a sudden the cops showed up because we didn't have a permit to film. And I nearly got arrested in Las Vegas on behalf of Brian Ibbett.
Because you were filming without a permit?
Yep. Luckily,
I wouldn't have thought of that, but it does make sense in retrospect that that's the kind of place you would absolutely have to get a permit because it's Vegas. Everybody wants to film there.
And also because the whole area, the hotels have purchased up to the street as far as property. That way they can keep people off the property.
Gotcha.
So everything has to be permitted. So anyway, luckily I have, 20 years working with law enforcement under my belt. So as soon as I saw the main guy walk up, I just moved up and started talking to him and explained myself. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll email this guy and we'll take care of it. So I told Brian, like, we're getting shuttered. And he's like, oh shit. And we ended up filming the rest of it inside the hotel with permission of the Plaza Hotel.
There you go. Let me tell you, if you get any kind of like travel crew right there, I mean, you're probably just 2 or 3 people, not a ton. I bet you and probably one other person.
Mm-hmm.
But every travel crew needs a former police officer, jailer, EMT, firefighter, somebody who's been in that world that can easily go, hey, yeah, we're not causing a problem. We got you. And talk professionally to them one-on-one. Yeah.
Talk the talk, know the jargon.
What's it? It's not a fixer in the travel world. It's
facilitator.
It's something else. Facilitator. Yeah. Facilitator. Yeah. When you travel.
Yeah. It's the guy that adds oil to all the squeaky wheels.
Yeah. I watched Long Way Up with Ewan McGregor and his buddy riding motorcycles from the tip of Argentina all the way up to LA. And because you're crossing multiple countries, they had facilitators at every border to speak the language, to pay the fees, whatever it is that needed to get through. So it was a smooth transit, and they still had some issues. So yeah, especially in Vegas. Hey, Mythrill is going to be on Wise and Nerdy, where fatherhood meets fandom, tomorrow night, and is going to be awesome there. So check us out there. Also, up the link right now. You're on in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm coming on soon too.
Yeah, I thought the look said I'm coming on tomorrow. I was like, no.
I knew I wasn't. I knew I wasn't because I spread them out because we have some things going on here in our family. But yeah, I knew I'd spread them out.
But yeah, there's going to be a blast. I'm putting in. I'll do it later. But yeah, come check that out. It's Wise, and it's only on YouTube live, so it's Wise _N_Nerdy on YouTube. You can watch it live, and of course the podcast is out there. All right, so I do have a question for you. So we're talking about FanX, and you're talking about pulling different things. You are a booker. You get guests for shows. So I don't know if you speak from a con perspective, but at least for a show perspective, I need to get on more shows. I know a lot of people watching and listening to this later are going, I would love to be a guest on our show. We have a whole room dedicated in our Discord, on Digital Media Track Discord, for need a guest. And it can be, I want to be a guest, but it's a Discord. So it goes by. What catches your eye, Hammond, when you're booking different shows and different guests?
Really? Okay, so the first thing I think about is the show and what they're looking for. So, like when I was booking Current Geek, they had a certain type of thing they were looking for. And so my goal was to try to match that the best I could. And I'll be honest, there were times where I didn't go well. I can think of one female I booked that was kind of a bust. And then I can also talk about the guy who peed live on the internet. That was also kind of a bust.
But did he do it on the show?
Yes. Oh, yeah. He was in the middle of the show talking to Brian
What?
Scott when he urinated. Yeah.
I didn't know that story.
Yeah. It's famous. The guy who peed on the internet.
That's not famous enough. Tell me the story. No, wait. You know what? No. Save it. He is going. We have a segment on Wise and Nerdy. Here's the link tree again. Link tree is linktr.ee/wise_n_nerdy. See all our channels, subscribe, all that jazz. But on Wise and Nerdy, we have a segment literally called Daddy Tell Me a Story. And that's going to be your story.
All right.
Daddy, tell me a story of when the man peed on the internet.
I sure can. In fact, it's still up there. I think it's Current Geek episode number 94, I think. It might be gone. I don't know. I have to look it up. But it's there. But yeah, so I try to line up the person with the show. And then the other part of it is when it's doing things for my own shows, I have to kind of admire their work. I just can't bring them on and talk about something I can't relate to or don't like. And I've had a couple of experiences where I was doing something for a film festival and I ended up interviewing a couple of people that I thought were going to be different. And I came out really disappointed, not just in how it turned out as a product, but in the fact that I kind of compromised my own theory of I have to like this person, like their work, admire what they do, some kind of admiration for me to kind of have a conversation, genuinely being excited about having them on. And I've covered the gamut. I've talked to classical musicians. I've talked to wrestlers. I've talked to sculptors. I've talked, you name it. I've talked to football players, and I'm not a huge sports fan, but the dedication and sacrifice you put into your life to be ultra successful at something, I can relate to. I get that, and I can talk to you about that. And so that's what I try to do is I try to find people who are going to be relatable and fun and at least be interesting, if not entertaining.
You obviously built up a network at this point. And it does help to meet people. Like I met you. Honestly, other than maybe it was just Dragon Cons where I met you, I guess, when we did the volunteering together. But you don't always hit it off. I mean, just as humans, we don't always hit it off. You and I connected somehow. I just feel like I've known you forever. I don't remember other than meeting at Dragon how we connected, what our origin story was. But there was a point where we were talking, like, "Hey, would you like to be on Current Geek?" I'm like, yeah, I need to be on every freaking show that's ever out there. And it was a blast. And
who did I have you on with? Who did I have you on?
I don't even remember. I have no idea.
Because I always try to pair people up fairly well too. That's my other thing. Is I always try to find good pairings.
It went well. I remember the show itself seemed to go well. I don't remember who was on with me. I do remember thinking, "Oh, I wasn't quite as prepared for this show as I should have been because I just brought my standard. Everything's funny and let me be a little bit loud and drunk uncle." And Tom laughs his ass off. Of course, Tom and I had met actually before that and interacted a bunch before. Scott and I have actually never really met in real life, and I think that was his first. And I have some similar thought processes and entertaining processes as Scott. So we kind of bumped into each other a little bit in that process. I think it still went well overall. And then I emailed, this is Rock Out of Podcasting, baby. It's not there for no reason. I emailed Scott like shortly after the show. I was like, "Man, such a blast. Love being on with you and Tom." I think emailed both like, "If you ever need a week off, man, don't cancel the show. I'll be happy to sit in for you." And Scott, I hope that was the reaction he had and not this MFer, right? But he wrote me back like, "Good to know. Like to have you on the show. We'll let you know." I'm like, "Yeah, no, but I always take my shot. Always take my shot." And then they canceled it like the week after that. I don't know what happened, but no,
they didn't cancel. What they did was they changed format to talk more about other things. It was because I had booked out a month in advance. I was up ready to go with a month worth of people, and I email a month worth of people. That would be 2, 4, 6, 8 people, and tell them, "Yeah, they're changing formats. We're not doing this."
Interest. I mean, and that happens. It's
Yeah.
business. But coming back to, so I mean, you had the opportunity to get to know me in person and see some things. That's not always the case. So, like, I'm cold calling certain places, trying to be on shows, podcast guest list or podcastguest.com. I always have to Google it. And you can pay to be on a list and so on and so forth. But for the person like myself, or those who think they're not like, I know I've done this 20 years. Okay, fine. So you're just starting out, whatever. How do you get the attention of somebody like yourself? Like, is there certain things that you go to a site and look at, or how would I go, Hammond, book me if you don't know me? Book me on your show.
So here's the thing: how I look for guests is I go to their website, I go to their Instagram.
But so somehow a name has to hit your mental sphere somehow, right?
So yeah, so let's say I'm watching a movie and I'm like, hey, I want to see if I can talk to them. And I go to their website, I'll go to their Instagram, I send a couple messages, and more times than not, I've only been shined, absolutely totally shined by about 5 people.
I believe you mispronounced shunned.
No, I mean shined. They completely just did not even respond by about 5 people.
Okay.
Other than that, I usually get some sort of response, whether it's like, "Hey, appreciate the thought, but I'm busy right now." More times than not, though, they're like, "Yeah, I'm got an opening in a couple weeks. What do you got?"
I like it. That is very cool. Have you thought about going the other direction and like representing somebody like myself and hitting other shows and saying, "Hey,
I have thought about it. I've never really gone more than just the thought because I don't know. I just never went beyond that, but it's something that would definitely, I mean, I know enough people who'd want to be on shows. Like I've got a bunch of podcast hosts that I'd love to stick into a boggle shaker and have you guys all end up on everybody else's shows.
See, there's that. And then there's I want to be on Getting Better Together with Ron Funches, or on Smartless with those guys, which that takes some reach, but we can build reach. So have we got a deal for you? Hammond Books. But I've been working on this is what I do, people. I take people, put them in uncomfortable positions and make them promise me things. Yeah. So that no. But we talk ideas, right? And I'd still want to get into why you do beyond the soundography and all that. It took you a second to realize I mixed up your branding. But I worked for Jim Brewer for about a year, and really he knew me okay. It was fine. I was doing his booking websites. Like somebody else would book him, I'd put the dates on his website, helped him with some podcast stuff, gave him some ideas. And then, I mean, very quickly, he outgrew me. I was a placeholder until he figured out what his steps were. He appreciated me. See ya. No hard feelings. But I really got to know how that world worked. And so I got really close with his publicist and some of the other people. But the publicist, I was like, oh. And I was doing a giant size team up at the time, breaking the panel. I was like, hey, Amy was her name. And we'd talk quite often about all kinds of stuff. I was like, hey, well, I got you. Here's what I do. Here's what I'm trying to do. What do you recommend? And she was very kind and gentle, but she essentially was saying, you're not ready for me. It's like $1,500 just for me to talk to you. And then because on the level you're playing at, more than likely you'll have to pay me some kind of fee until we get you in enough places. And I was broke, man, at that point. And there was no money coming in for the show and all that. But I was like, cool, at least I have a marker of something to aim for. And I never actually thought about, if you contact people and get them on shows, it seems like it's just as easy for you to flip that script and you start, hey, I got somebody for you you're really gonna like.
I mean, I've done this with people. Like I used to produce Women Kick Ass with Danielle Bergio, and she's a stunt woman who did the Matrix films.
Yeah,
and
I was gonna totally ask you about that. When you look up if you look up Hammond Chamberlain, it comes up with mostly your stuff. And I'm going to Google it and tell you the thing that jumped out at me. But the second thing, when I go to images, because I was looking for a headshot because Tyra was doing the promotion for you. There's this Women Kick Ass and all this women stuff. And there's Hammond's face. And all was like, how
Yeah.
Did Stubby McBalderson get on this women's empowerment stuff? Good for you, man. I mean, people who don't know you don't understand.
So what happened is I started doing interviews for the Artemis Women in Action Film Festival back in like 2017, 2016. And I did interviews leading up to the film festival. I usually did about 6 weeks of interviews for their winners and for their nominees leading into the film festival. So I got kind of wrapped up in this stunt woman world. And 1 year after doing it, I contacted the festival owner, Melanie, and I just said, how about we do a show wrapped around the idea of this festival and keep the name going, kind of keep the brand going while the festival's not actively active. And she's like, great, who do you want to host? I'm like, I want Danielle to host it because she's awesome. So I got a hold of Danielle and we did it for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years until she left to go do her own feature. So the last episode is basically me interviewing her about her first feature film she did. And so, yeah, we interviewed Zoe Bell, we interviewed Livy Tran, we interviewed, all these luminaries in the women's stunt world. And then in 2019, I was actually their red carpet interviewer for the Artemis Women in Action Film Festival. And sometimes you just gotta, like you said, you just gotta put your name out there and try something.
And it worked. I'm making faces because I was doing the Google and it didn't do the AI summary at first. So then I changed it to J Hammond C, get the AI summary. I should have screenshotted it because AI learns. And I've already done a number of searches to get your photo, to get some bio stuff, to get, now it's refined on you, but it was saying something. Here's the first part that's still here. J Hammond C is the online handle of Hammond Chamberlain, a podcaster, producer, and musician. It had some kind of addition. And also, Hammond Chamberlain is known for, and it's like this movie and this TV show. I was like, it was weird. I was like, oh, I want to see what you say about that.
Was it the Super 7?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Super 7 and Sandra West. I have been involved with that cast since 2015. I knew Bob Griffith, or Scott Rhodes is his real name. Bob Griffith was his stage name. He was a stuntman, but he started doing this series called Super 7, which is this kind of, imagine Italian spy films mixed with the Batman Adam West TV show. Okay. So campy, very funny, lots of strange characters, but they were super supportive all along. So I have producer credit on Super 7 and on Sandra West. And then Sandra West, the woman who plays Sandra West, her name is Olivia Dunkley. She's a friend of mine. She's actually here from Salt Lake, but she lives in California. And she just released she's got a feature coming out in October called Sleigh Ride, which is a thriller Christmas movie that she did a couple years ago, and it's finally coming out. So
S-L-A-Y?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. But yeah, so because of all the things I know somewhat about the music background, because it says J Hammond C is a singer. Like I could click on that bio.
I'm not a singer. I don't sing. In fact, I was told not to sing in college by somebody because I would offend God in church. So I don't sing.
Do you believe that though?
I've had enough people tell me, why are you singing when I should be playing harmonica, that I believe it.
That's something else I picked up on. You are listed in one of your bios somewhere, somehow, as a professional harmonica player.
Yeah, I've got studio recordings to my name. I played live throughout college. I paid for almost a year of college playing in different settings here in Salt Lake.
Did little J Hammond in 8th grade want to grow up and be a professional harmonica player? I mean, we are both 90s kids and the Blues Travelers.
I am not a 90s kid. I was born in 71.
So you're a 90s young adult. Okay. Blues Travelers are so awesome.
Yeah. So I bought my first harmonica when I was in 3rd grade in a place called Merlebach, France, because my dad was stationed in Germany, and we went there and I bought my first harmonica there. I did not take it seriously until I was in high school. So, 86, 87, 88, somewhere in there, I started playing kind of more seriously. I wanted to be Huey Lewis in the News when I grew up.
Who didn't want to be Huey Lewis in the News?
And then in 1991, I was living in Norfolk, Nebraska when I heard All in the Groove from Travelers and Thieves by Blues Traveler. and it blew my mind. And I'm like, I want to be that when I grow up. So I came back to Salt Lake, started playing more aggressively, started learning how to do those runs. The first time I did a Blues Traveler style solo, I passed out. I hyperventilated and passed out on stage.
Oh no.
So I didn't, because I was between the anxiety of doing something new, playing it in front of a crowd like that, doing something different. The breathing just got away
Take a
from
really
me.
short, shallow breath.
It just
Yep.
got away from me, and I just went down. And then I got it right, and that's what I did. And then I discovered a guy named Little John Chrisley, who is even more talented, I think, than John Popper.
Yep.
And
I've heard John Chrisley.
and so I've been patterning my playing after those guys since.
What have you done lately?
I've been trying to learn how to play the Chapman stick, which you can see right
Yeah,
there.
I'll give him the big picture.
The Chapman stick is right there behind me.
So it looks like a broken bass.
It's a 10-string tap style instrument invented by a man named Emmett Chapman back in the 1970s. And I've been playing it now for about 10 years. I still suck, but I've been playing at it.
Do you have a hurdy-gurdy?
No, I do not.
But I know where there's a
I
half belt one in Philadelphia.
have an ocarina and I have a nose flute.
I don't want to know about that last one. We're good. Is it true harmonicas are called mouth organs?
Yes. Yes.
That's the worst name.
It
Other
is.
than cheating that you can have in music.
No, it's bad. It's really bad. And also, come on, my name is Hammond, so of course you're going to come up with the Hammond organ, which also leads to lots of jokes you don't want to tell.
Right?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. All right. So, but you've actually had, beyond professional harmonica player, I believe bass, guitar.
I did play guitar for a while, but mostly it was harmonica. I know just enough piano that when someone walks up, they can say, "Oh, do you play piano?" And I can go, "No."
Man, okay, I've been wanting to ask this of somebody I respect for a long time. What if you had to pick one instrument? What is the most versatile instrument in music?
Okay,
in your opinion, it's not like a joke.
Okay, so when you're talking about versatile instruments, do you mean like portability?
No.
Or are you talking about
like you can write all kinds of music, you can play all kinds of genres, you can affect moods in different ways.
Okay, so first off, what you write on affects how you write, because where you put your hands comfortably on something changes what naturally happens. So when you lay your hands on the piano, you'll automatically feel comfortable in like the key of C, just because you're on the white keys. When you lay your hand across when you put your hand on the guitar neck, your hands rest a certain way, so it's easier to play like in the key of E, just because that's what it's tuned in. So, and on a Chapman stick, it's something else. So, I mean, what you write on affects how you write. So versatility is kind of relative at this point. But as far as just universal placement in music, I would probably say the piano or the keyboard.
See, because that's what I think. Yeah, is the piano. Why? You were saying because?
Well, because it's been, I guess, play tested and experimented with in all these different ways. So you already kind of have proof of concept that it's good for classical. You have proof of concept it's good for country. You have proof of concept it's good for rock and roll. It's been everything. But then whatever you'd write on a piano is easily translated into other instruments. So if you want to write a bass line, sure, write a bass line on a piano, and it can translate over to a bass on guitar or a stand-up bass. If you want to write a melody line, okay, well, you can easily transpose a melody line into any instrument. So it's a great place to start whatever musical journey you're going to take. I have plenty of friends who teach music, and they're like, no matter what instrument you're going to go to, you need 2 years of piano before you start the one you want to do.
I can agree with that. I real landing, like I learned from it. I can't tell you how many years of piano I had, but my mom made me take like 5. I got stuff out of it, but I think maybe about 2 of those years were effective. The other were whatever. But yeah, no, I went on and played percussion. I played some guitar. I mean, I'm okay on guitar. Like I could go into church youth group and play praise music all day long on a guitar and blow them away. But I would not consider myself a guitarist. Percussionist, I would.
But also, piano helps with that too, because you get the limb independence. You already, and that's the thing with Chapman stick is you need limb, and not just limb independence. You get finger independence when you get piano. So that idea of being a drummer or percussionist, limb independence is one of the hardest things to break, is that idea of a leg, separating your legs and your arms from your brain and your heart to have their own rhythms. That's witchcraft in some cases. So I mean, when you think of people like Mike Portnoy or Neil Peart, who can play complex polyrhythms on one hand and a 4/4 bass on the other, or 4/4 bass drum on the other, whilst doing some hi-hat combination, you're looking at witchcraft, because there's actually 4 different bodies working in one unified thing.
Yeah. And I want to distract myself, so I'm gonna wait on that and come back to it. But I think the piano is the most versatile as well. Not because just everything you said I get, but for me it can enhance anything: action film, romance, suspense. I mean, it can take you from being happy to sad, and well, quite literally a couple of keystrokes. And it can add power to a song that was mediocre, right? You take a halfway decent song, and then you give a true pianist who loves music and they translate it onto the piano. It's like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard.
Also,
right?
I think piano is a true litmus test of any song. If a song sounds good on just a naked piano with a good player, then you've got a good song. If you need to add bells and whistles or gussy it up, then your song needs help.
I agree. And it's so cool. I've always had that in my mind. I don't think I've ever asked anybody that. So what I was going to distract myself with, why are you not on TikTok, sir?
Because I'm 53 years old, and TikTok's a kid's game.
You want to watch some witchcraft, and I don't mean girls jumping across your screen. I mean musical witchcraft. There's so many good channels. I'm watching this channel where drummers react to songs for the first time, and these are songs that are very popular, but their tour, the world, whatever, they hadn't heard it. They removed the drum track, and I'm talking about world-class drummers.
Drumeo does that on YouTube, and that's where I watch that.
Yeah,
so they take, I like longer form. I still, my attention span still matters to me.
I get you. But there's this one guy, he's probably on YouTube too, but as soon as you said witchcraft, I'm like, yeah, this dude, he does crazy, man. I mean, that's his whole channel, is watch the craziness. And he'll take, I know how to play drums. I cannot figure out how he's doing the paradiddle with the one, but it is so fast, and he's playing songs that you don't play drums to, and he flips it, and he's doing one, and it's like each limb is playing 5 different beats at once. It is crazy.
Yep. Actually, I am friends with the guy who plays with the Blue Man Group in Vegas.
Love the Blue Man Group.
And we've talked a lot about how his drumming has changed, because the way the Blue Man Group plays, they always have a hi-hat kind of driving the rhythm in almost everything they do.
Yeah.
And so as he's gone on to do his own stuff, he has kind of incorporated that drive into his new music that he's been writing since he's been playing with them. So it's interesting how you continue to learn, because that's a question I ask, is how much time do you spend still learning new techniques, learning new technologies, learning new skills as a professional musician? Because usually by the time you're working, you don't have time to learn anymore. You're just out there working. So asking people how much time they spend learning still actually is I get a lot of interesting answers with that. Usually it's not as much as I should, is the answer I get a lot.
Yeah. They were fantastically crazy when they first came out. Just the concepts of, originally it was just PVC pipes and the length of them, and using paddles, and it's, of course, it's gone so crazy since then, and good for them. I mean, it's a really cool thing. All right, back to
they also use the Chapman stick, so that's good too.
I'm gonna have to Google it. I mean, I saw it. I'm gonna have to like YouTube some videos or something to see.
Look up a guy named Rob Martino.
Okay.
He's and Nick Beggs. They're my 2 favorite Chapman stick players.
I will check them out. Have you interviewed them on any of your shows?
I have had both of them on my shows. Nick
Which
Beggs
ones? Which shows?
So Beyond the Playlist, I've had Nick Beggs on. He actually in the 80s was in a band called Kagja Gugu, the Too Shy people. He was in that band, but now he plays Chapman stick with Steve Hackett and Steve Morris when they go on tour. And then Rob Martino, he's a independent musician, and he released an album a few years ago called One Cloud. And when that came out, I interviewed him. So I've interviewed a lot of Chapman stick players.
and that's where I go with finding the stories. You had said earlier, you can't book somebody that you don't appreciate their work, you don't have some kind of connection. I've learned to find connection because when I do the moderation at Atlanta Comic Con or Comic Convention, I got branding matters, and they had to change the name because it's sold and whatever. It was Atlanta Comic Convention. When they were smaller, I got to handpick who I wanted to moderate. This last year, I still got in my opinion, some of the best interviews, but I didn't get to pick them. It just so happened there were people I liked. Jeremy Shadow I'd already done in the past, so he and I had worked together. That's Finn from Adventure Time and one of the Voltron from the new Voltrons, whatever. But I've had to go, okay, Adam Baldwin. I know of him, but my only thing I really loved was Jane on Firefly. But he's done so much, and I can't just
not even. You didn't watch. You didn't watch Chuck? Who are you not watching Chuck?
I watched Chuck.
Oh,
Chuck
come
was okay.
on. Chuck was great.
It was decent. Maybe it was a time of my life. Maybe I don't know.
What do you have against Subway? That's what I have to ask. Because what do you have against Subway? Because Chuck was the big.
Well, I mean, Jared, can we just say I love Subway? I do. They're getting a little funky now, but maybe it's just my local Subways. But anyway, no problem. Yeah, Chuck was, and I remembered that, but I knew he'd done other things I hadn't watched. So I was like, let me go dig through. And here's what I find. I find some kind of parent connection. I always look for that thing that, I can tell this is, because of my experience, there's a story behind something here in some article, and you never get asked about it. Mm-hmm. And like with Adam Baldwin specifically, we did you were on this show, you were on that show. Of course, the fans asked some questions, and I would try to round it out so it's not just, can you sing the Jane Mutter song, and those kind of things. And I tried to build experiences, and it made a better experiences. But what lit him up, which also, by the way, he's just maybe an inch shorter than me, so he was giving me that uncomfortable stink eye when we're standing next to each other. Like, I can still take you. I bet you could. But we were talking, and we got towards the end, and people were asking questions like, "Hey, you've got 3 kids." I think it's 3 kids. It's been a couple years, but you got 3 kids. If they wanted to go into following your footsteps into acting, what advice would you give? And he's like, oh, man, he had to stop and think. He's like, nobody's ever asked me. And then he talked about it. And then I said, what was life like doing the filming when they were little and this and that? And he got to talk about that. And afterwards, I mean, I get this from every interview, but I don't know why his mattered more. Just this light in his eyes. He was like, that was one of the best interviews I've ever had, man. Thank you so much. Like, because would you say, Hammond, when you're doing interviews, when you're connected, you got to make it important to you. You find something that you're passionate about and find that in them.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite interviews, I interviewed this woman named Abby Miller. She was on Justified. She's been on Aquarius. Familiar. She's done a lot of stuff. I knew her through her work on Booth at the End, the Hulu series, which
was that only one season? Because it should have made more.
They made 2.
Okay, I think I've only seen the one. That was so good.
Yeah, so I interviewed the guy who created it, Chris Kubasik. I interviewed Xander Berkeley, and I interviewed Abby Miller, all from that show. Because I also did a podcast called the Booth at the End podcast.
Yeah.
I saw that. So anyway, I interviewed Abby Miller, and when I was doing a little bit of research on her, I realized that she lived in Nebraska the same time I did. Well, the year I was in Nebraska, it got so cold on Halloween that the state actually canceled trick-or-treating because it was unsafe to be outside.
Whoa.
They tried to do it the next year, but it was like an ice storm, and it was like minus 40 degrees outside with wind, and it was just unsafe to be outside. And so when I interviewed her, I said, hey, by the way, I see that you're from Nebraska. Do you remember the year they canceled Halloween? And she was like, oh my gosh. And you can hear the interview change tone from being just a question answer interview to being a conversation, because now all of a sudden I know something that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah. And actors, actresses, podcasters. I mean, I'll do any interview, but I will tell you my least favorite interview to ever do, like you're interviewing me, is ask me the same.
That's your least favorite? Questions. Screw you.
No, I love being interviewed. No, that's the scenario. See, my brain is ADD backwards. So the scenario is you're interviewing me. The least favorite one of those I have is like they go send us 10 questions or 20 questions to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So I make them weird questions. I like, dude, you just open up a can of worms. I hate that.
I actually refuse to do that. I tell them I
Good.
have 4 or 5 questions. I have 4 or 5 questions that I'll fall back on if we're not having a conversation. I say I spent 20 years working as a therapist or as a counselor and as a crisis worker. So my skill is listening. So I'm going to listen to what you're telling me. I'm going to ask questions based on that. So you're actually leading the conversation, whether you like it or not.
And that's, I love that. That's
I just
refuse.
I just don't send. I just refuse to send.
Yeah. And I've had to, not had to, I could have sent it, but they're like, oh, well. But that's where I really learned. Okay, if you ask me for questions, I don't know this is right for me, because that's the other part of it. I hate question answer, looking for soundbite, question answer. Look at like, no, let's talk. Because one of my favorite shows I did, which is not on anymore, but I was on 2 times, maybe 3, Bad Love and Beyond, or I think it was called. I always confused with it. Sounds like Bed Bath and Beyond, and I always made fun of them for it to their faces. But it was this New York friend couple. They weren't like a couple, but this team of male female friends, African American in New York, and I'm Southern white guy, but we just hit it off. But they were talking about, and I'm just telling stories, and in the midst of my story, I'll turn around and go, but don't you tell me you got a story like this, and they got so much engaged in it that they changed some of the format of their show because they had more fun. It's like, yeah, you gotta put yourself into it. I mean, you watch any behind the scenes on celebrities doing the promo tours for like Deadpool 3, right? It's just the highlights that make the internet are the people who ask that weird question or take it in a different direction, because it's the same question over and over again. And I'm like, I want to be a bad interviewee in that case. I want to be the person who plays with you, because that question got asked, dude. Come on, be original.
Well, and one of the things that I still kind of get a thrill out of, even after doing this for almost 11 years now, is when someone says to me, I've been doing blank, whatever it is, for over 20 years, and no one's ever asked me that before.
Yeah, that's the goal.
And I still get a thrill when I hear that, even though I've been doing this for so long now. But there's still a part of me that's like, yeah, I did it. I found something that's unique.
That is a lie. I'm looking up the name because I always forget the actress's name. Let's see, 90s.
This is riveting internet there, Charles.
I know.
Riveting internet.
Look, my Google foo is not that strong. Judith, where's her last name? April O'Neil from the original movie Teenage Mutant Ninja. Judith Hogue. Yeah. So if I get that chance before every moderation, get that 5-10 minutes with them, what do you want to talk? What don't you want to talk about? So I know how to
avoid certain things. Yep.
And most people are like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. I said, what do you want to talk about? Like, what's something that, Adam Baldwin, he had a brand new show he's developing at the time. He had his hat on that had it on. The hat's like, oh, let's talk about this when we get a chance. Cool. Gotcha. And then I ask, can I record it for Finding the Stories if you're cool with it? And with her, we talked for a little bit, and she had a very big charity thing that she does where she helps women and does other things like that. That doesn't get, because she's there as April O'Neil from the 1990s team. So we got to talk about that. And then afterwards, just that true from the heart, not thanks for being sitting next to me, but that, man, that thank you for the opportunity. I guess someone said that gratitude for the opportunity to shine and be a human. That's to me, that's the gold.
Well, I interviewed, there's a very roundabout thing about how this happened, but I ended up interviewing Chase Masterson, who was a regular on Deep Space Nine. And I've done some extra things with her, but she runs this charity. Yeah, she's run this charity in LA for homeless teens for years. And when I had her on, we talked a little bit about that. We spent more time talking about the homeless charity. And at one point, she said something about how, 1 block over, you have the most expensive street in the the world with Rodeo Drive, and then right across the street from that, you've got homeless kids living in poverty. And I kind of went, and I kind of, I guess, laughed a little bit. And she goes, "It's not funny." And I said, "No, I was actually just thinking about the fact that I have a similar situation because I'd worked in the jail as a crisis worker. I've worked in rehab facilities for adolescents." And all of a sudden, interview stopped, and we started talking about that kind of stuff completely unprompted. And it was a much different conversation than I was thinking about having. But it was, when I was done, it was one of those things where I'm like, yeah, we actually brought up some stuff that needed to be talked about.
You gotta trust the process, and sometimes processes you throw the script out.
Yep.
I'm same with you. I have a few questions I always fall back on, because if I can get you to tell at least one story that's not just something I know from your TV show, or I mean, it can be anybody, right? It can be Sam off the street. Like Cos has been on the show here twice. I want to say at least twice, if not 3 times. And first time, I don't know what I'll say, but if I can get you to tell one story, I can grab something out of that, build on it, get you comfortable, build on it, and build on it, because I think we're doing 2 times. Thank you, guys. I think the universal we in the interview world, and the digital media world, and the con hosting moderation world, we're doing it backwards. And I didn't know how to put it into words. So I did see a TikTok video of a guy at a con, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know who his panelists were, but I caught enough very quickly as they're giving advice and doing things. He goes, and you didn't see a clock, but whatever he said indicated they're at least 3/4 of the way through the panel. And he's like, "Have you noticed I've never introduced, other than names, I've never introduced who my panelists were, because in order to really get good information across, you need to show who you are." I'm adding some words to it, but show you are, earn that trust that says, "I will listen to you." And then we tell you the credits. And doing that, I got to sit down with Mary Robinette Cole. She's one of my favorite interviews of all time. She's an author. She's done some fun books. I was at Chattacon this year and got to do Finding the Story. Like, I've been pushing that this year, and it's worked. Officially, the panelists Finding the Stories interview with, and it's a guest that they give me. She was the guest of honor for the literary track there at Chattacon. And I met her at the panel before, where they're about to kick off. I came and introduced myself to her, but I did my research, whatever. And I told her it's going to be a conversation. It's going to be, the audience is going to ask stuff. It's going to be somewhere in your comfort zone, but if I hear something, we're going to go. And you just tell me not now or whatever. And she's like, "Yo, cool." And I got her. She's a master puppeteer. She did, it almost made it sound like prison. She did time here in Atlanta at the Museum of Puppetry Arts. And so we talked about some of that, and she did one of my favorite shows ever. This is the world of puppetry, right? She was the hands of one of the characters on Lazy Town, which was a Swedish children's show that was Icelandic children's show. That was brilliant. And I love that show to this day.
That's
and
the girl with the pink hair, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Gonna bake a cake.
It's my kids watch that.
Yeah.
My kids watch that. And again, it was that and Fresh Beat Band, who was what my kids got all into.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've actually interviewed Yvette, who played Kiki on Fresh Beat Band a number of times. And I'm friends with her sister too, who's also a stunt woman who I'd interviewed because of Super 7 and Sandra West.
The world is so small and we make it so big. There's connections everywhere. And the reason this is my favorite is because she trusted me. And I mean, it helped that the head of the con introduced me and, made that we trust him so you can trust. But we got this most amazing moment in the middle of it. Is like somebody said, "Okay, as a puppeteer," I forget what the question was irrelevant, but it was something about how do you come up with the sound or blah, 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 something kind of mundane. But because we were already in this performance / conversation mode, we got this 5-minute reenactment of this bag that she had, like a dash bag she had with her, jumping off a cliff, and her doing all the audio for it. They were just sitting there at the table with their, audio book kind of, and it was brilliant. And she just laughed. She's like, "Yeah, I've never gotten to do that before." Like, there it is. Yeah. There it is. Mark the time. We never got to do it before moment.
Well, I interviewed Howard Levy, who played harmonica with Bella Fleck and the Fleck Tones. And the whole time I'm talking to him, he's noodling on his harmonica, doing improv stuff all the way through. And I'm like, I'm getting a private lesson / show just as I'm talking to this guy.
Yeah, improv is some of the most intimate connection creators could have.
Yep.
It is crazy. I want to throw this out to you. You've had a lot of amazing adventures. What's one? I'm sure there's many, but what's one of the adventures that pops in mind of like, I still can't believe I got to do that. Talk to that person, play that thing, whatever. Meet Rock God of Podcasting.
Okay, so I'll do two. I think doing the red carpet interviews for the film festival is a big deal.
That is a good thing.
That is something in a million years would have dreamed that I would have done. And then I think I'll add two more. One, interviewing Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater was a big deal. I never thought I'd get to that point where I could, interview Jordan. Still my biggest show to date, individual show, that one episode. And then I have gotten involved in the contemporary classical community to the point where when they have albums that are up for Grammys, I'm usually one of the people who gets to interview these people. And I have gotten involved with this community of really talented classical musicians. And who knew that the guy who grew up on, Dokken and Rat would be doing these interviews, but here I am and I'm having a great time and they're wonderful, amazing people. And I've developed friendships with many of them. And I don't know how it really happened. I just know it happened during the pandemic. I've also interviewed Mike Keneally, who played with Frank Zappa and Stink Vai, and he did tour with Devin Townsend, and he guest listed us into a show in Denver for me and Brian to go see Dream Theater and Devin Townsend and Animals as Leaders live, and we had to hang out backstage and chat with him. So I mean, those are things I never in a million years would have ever dreamed of happening, but here I am doing them, and I'm just a dorky dude in his basement in Salt Lake City, just happening to talk to strangers on the internet.
Okay, you made it sound weird at the end, but
it's true though. I mean, when you deal with it though, when you look at it, I stare at a wall, looking at a camera basically, but staring at a wall, talking to people.
It's a great gig to have, man. If I can figure out how to make a lot more money at it, I would love that. But it's my passion.
That's why I produce so many other shows for people. That's what happens.
Not a bad Quoting Fingers day gig, right?
Yeah.
I run a company right now that is still forwarding me into the world I want to be in, and getting me closer to full-time entertainer / creator / consultant. But yeah, I mean, I'll tell you my favorite time of life. It was the hardest time of life that we had. I got laid out from work and went on the hustle. So I'm driving Lyft. I'm driving Uber. I'm taking whatever gig. I'm hosting trivia, whatever pays me. But because they were controlled by me, I got to produce Entrepreneur Radio, which paid me pretty well and connected me to a world of people that I wouldn't have had before. I got to start finding the stories, and it's been to this date my most well-received show. And it's been like 3 years since I launched the first season. Everybody's like, last night I got asked, when's the second season going to launch? Like, I'm working on it. The hardest thing to do, Hammond, is to do for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been doing soundography. We're starting to record season 10 right now. And we've taken an extra long break between season 9 and 10 my dad passed away. We've had some things going on family-wise. It's just been kind of hard, but soundography is a great gig. And people are anxious for us to get back at it. And, 10 years in, it's still something that both of us really love doing.
So let's hit this real fast. This is the whole, hey, we gave information. We had a great conversation. I could talk to you forever. We'll have you. Well, of course, you'll be back on Wise and Nerdy on Thursday nights on YouTube at wise_and_nerdy. Next Thursday, so a week from tomorrow, so that would be October 8th-ish.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Whatever the second week of October is with the Thursday, that's when we're going to do it. But we'll definitely have you back on. Be awesome. I want Tyra to meet you. I want you to meet Tyra. It's going to be a whole set of different questions and funness there. Hopefully we're going to keep you around and have you as a regular. But tell us your hot 2-minute take on your favorite shows that you're doing right now. Where should people listen?
All right. So Beyond the Playlist is a show that I've been doing now since December of 2013. I've never missed a week in over 10 years. I've done over 700 interviews. Not all of them are online. I need to take care of my RSS feed. I have been doing soundography for 10 seasons or almost 10 seasons. We're recording 10 seasons now. That's at soundography.com. I guess the things I'm most proud of right now are the fact that with Beyond the Playlist, there's a segment of it called Beyond the Playlist Goes to the Movies, where JD Duffield is a regular co-host with me, and Neil Marshall, the director of Dog Soldiers and The Descent and Doomsday and Relic and a bunch of other things. No, what's it called? Not Relic. Can't remember the other one that he's done a bunch of things. He did the Battle of Blackwater for Game of Thrones. He did Centurion. He's done a bunch of stuff. Anyway, he's now been on now for almost a year, helping us pick movies and talk about movies. And his insight into both independent and large budget films is really it's quite amazing to have on a rinky-dink little show like mine.
Stop saying rinky dink. People love it. They want you to do more, and you got cool people who want to come play with you.
And also hopefully in the next year or two, I'm going to have something on YouTube with a video component that JD and I are kicking around. And there's something else I want to do that I'm going to actually probably pitch Friday to the person I'm going to talk to. So.
That is cool, man. God, I could talk to you forever. We're going to talk some more later. Glad to have you as my new publicist agent to get me gigs. Thank you for signing up.
Son, you're not ready for me yet. It's going to cost you $1,500 just to have me work with you.
For a year? I could do that for the year. Yeah. You didn't spend a 5-year gig, $1,500. That's good, man. I got you. Do bend our brothers here. I so want to be a judge, guest, mentor guest for America's Next Top Podcaster. And Ibbott just no. He doesn't even tell me this. Like, we'll see. He laughs every time.
So here's the thing: is we're actually after 4 seasons. We're looking at restructuring how we do it. The idea of it being more educational and less game show and less reality show. I think we're trying to do something a little bit more educational, a little bit more helpful, a little bit more community building than the game show. The game show had its elements and it was fine. It was fun, but we really did realize that the crash course in podcasting is the element that people really were coming for and the people were really kind of getting the most out of.
Which sounds like you got room for me, buddy. So I want to come play.
Well, our mutual friend, Tony B. Henderson, has gone down in history with the worst podcast title ever.
Oh, I know. It was so bad. Even when I heard it, I was like, are you kidding, Tony?
And that was with my friend Danielle Berkio from Women Kick Ass.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, I understood as soon as he said it. I go, I know your brain, Tony, but you should have run that past somebody because I heard what everybody else heard. Like,
when he said, I'm just trying to reclaim that word, I'm like, dude, it's not yours to reclaim.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the other thing, too, that crash course mentality. The game show, the reality show, it was a little tough. You get, as you said, when you want to interview somebody, you got to connect with them. Well, I don't know how well I would do with a team that I'd never met before. That one, and I believe in his case, one of them was kind of opposite of how he does things, which I know is part of the challenge. But I'm like, it was interesting. But
there is an element though of learning how to work with other people that. As podcasters, we kind of isolate ourselves. I mean, we're basically alone in our basements doing this. So the idea of collaborating, working, sharing ideas, giving and taking, not just compromising. It's this idea of give and take because
co-creation.
Yeah, because sometimes compromise actually makes things worse. Sometimes it's a matter of sticking to your guns and then making it work within the confines of whatever the thing is you're doing without killing each other. And that's an important skill that you who've had day jobs as a first responder, and I've worked in jails and prisons and all over the place. There's an idea of that idea of, you're sitting on someone's lap for 8 hours a day. You have to learn how to work with them. And as a producer, you're going to be hired by, you're going to be working with people you don't always get along with. So that element of learning how to do that is also incredibly important.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, and Emmett did promise me something that he did not come through. He promised me in the rules there'd be a clause, no deity is allowed, and he did not put that in the rules. He still we were working together actively when he was launching.
Yeah,
that's I think that's actually why he left Pokemon Go. I think the show we were doing together then, because it's like, okay, this is a passion project. We got it, cool, and of course I'm like, hey buddy, I've been in this just like 5 minutes after you got into this. Come on, man, let me come. He like, I was like, can I compete? He's like, no. He like wrote rules because I mean, granted, I get it. 20 years of doing this, working with people like Brian Emmett, and going up against. I like Sean Weiland was on season 4.
Yeah, he was great. He was great.
Yeah, I love him, but I think I'd crush him.
Yeah,
20 years versus 4 years.
We've had people who have experience in like radio and other things, and it did not translate as well.
No, yeah.
So experience doesn't always matter. Sometimes in some particular cases, personality matters more than radio experience or good voice or creativity. Sometimes you just have to be not an ass.
Okay, I don't know if I can be not an ass, but I got everything else he said. So anyway, all that being said, we got to get it. All right, so jhammondc.com. Is it at jhammondc everywhere?
Yeah, I'm not on, except on Twitter. I deleted my Twitter account about a month ago.
Fair enough.
I'm still at the Soundography on Twitter. You can get a hold of us there, but I'm jhammondc pretty much on every social media: Blue Sky, Mastodon, Counter Social, Instagram, all of them.
And you can find. You need to honestly get you a link tree.
I have one. It's on my Instagram bio.
How's the? I'm Tyra. Tyra. See, here's the thing, Hammond. Be prepared when you come back on. Tyra is a social media goddess. Like, she is legit a university professor who teaches marketing and social media. She's gonna yell at you, just so you know.
And guess what? I'm okay with that because I'm 53 and I need to hire a 15-year-old kid to do my social media for me sometime.
In all honesty, I can't speak for her. But actually, I'll tell you when we get off of here. But there's a thing that you could probably tie in and get a college kid, more or less. You find all my stuff. Linktree is our GOP42 for my personals, and which also does throw it out to link Wise and Nerdy, which is my man. My baby is finding the stories, but my passion project is Wise and Nerdy. I'm loving doing that with Joe, and I'm glad that Miss Pearl is going to be on tomorrow, and you'll be on next week, Hammond, and we're going to talk some more. Hammond's going to help get some guests all across the board and do some awesome sauce. And the next time you see me, he'll be booking me on the Smart List crew. It'll be all right. So thanks for coming in. Thanks for I gotta play some music. Thanks for being awesome with me tonight, Hammond. Any last parting words?
Remember who you are and what you stand for.
Those are good. Enjoy the music, everybody. We'll see you next week.